Story 1. I watch people leave trash everywhere at the beach, as if the ocean were a magical disappearing garbage bin. Story 2. It just dawned on me one day in 2005, and it has never lessened. Story 3. Nothing changed after Sandy Hook. Story 4. I realize that the majority of people have little empathy and do not try to understand things that do not affect them or their loved ones. Many would rather remain out of touch than feel discomfort or admit their privilege. Coldness and indifference are widespread in humanity. Story 5. This is the day we decided to double down on climate denialism. Humanity has rejected science and decency. We are all headed down a dark road. Story 6. Let me find that graphics interchange format image of SpongeBob with the giant list that unfurls across the whole room. Story 7. The worst people often end up in charge, and a significant portion of the governed seems to want them there. I am talking about this election, but the problem runs much deeper. This election is a striking example, yet we have behaved this way as a species for millennia. Once a society grows beyond a chiefdom, things tend to go downhill. Story 8. I've been raped, lied to, used, and hurt too much to believe in you all anymore. I hate humans, and I hope we don't survive much longer. I am sorry you are feeling so hurt. If you are in immediate danger or thinking about harming yourself or others, please call your local emergency number now. If you are in the United States, call or text 988 for the Suicide and Crisis Lifeline. If you are outside the United States, please contact local emergency services or a crisis line in your area. I can help you find support if you want. Story 9. The fact that we still discriminate against others based on sexuality, race, and religion. Story 10. The fact that women outnumber men 11 to 10 in the United States, combined with the results of this election. Story 11. The inability of humanity to get along and agree on common goals is alarming. We lead scattered lives. Someone born amid struggle and war will not have the same values and understanding as someone born into luxury and wealth. We have become too despondent. The only course correction is to begin a dialogue about sharing resources, or to destroy ourselves and start again. There are enough resources to go around. There does not need to be a universal gospel or God that requires us to kill one another. We can coexist. Yet the more humanity follows its current path, the further it moves toward the endgame, and eventually it will be too late. History will remember. Story 12. The mass murder and exploitation of sentient beings and the world around us. Story 13. Right now, the election results in the United States of America. For the love of fuck, guys, why are you like this? Story 14. Consider how closed-minded they are. Are we seriously letting a few incidents define how we pursue clean energy? Oh, and they are rude. Story 15. The internet. I didn't need to know what people think. Story 16. I love how all these questions are popping up after the election. Story 17. The ignorance of the voting population is striking. How can so many millions vote against their interests because a wealthy bully told them to? Story 18. Yeah, definitely Trump. I live on the other side of the world, and I am so sick of hearing about this rapist, let alone what could happen in the next 4 years. Story 19. Racism. I am an older white man who has seen enough nonsense. Story 20. The 2024 election. How can so many people support a man who so openly hates everyone? Story 21. There are so many who can watch another person suffer and feel happy because that person is different, or who care more about ideas we cannot verify than about what is right in front of them. Many would turn on their own family for a short-sighted goal that will most likely turn against them in the end. I say this not to be cruel or to joke, but I have truly lost all hope for humanity. Story 22. This election? What the everlasting fuck is wrong with people? Story 23. Trump supporters. I wish I were kidding. The insufferable Didibros I put up with in 2015 changed my view of people, and my view has not recovered since. Story 24. During a trip to Mexico, I saw animals being mistreated. It was heartbreaking. Story 25. People are fearful. Rather than addressing their core issues, they lash out and falsely justify their misplaced beliefs. Story 26. Positive change only happens through extreme conflict. Nothing gets done without many people being hurt to achieve it. Story 27. Human nature. Psychopathic behavior is everywhere. The more normalized it becomes, the harder it is to remove, because it becomes increasingly accepted and rationalized. Story 28. This election hit me hard. What upset me was that a convicted criminal who wants to strip away many human rights is president again. Story 29. Well, once again we've constructed Frankenstein's monster because people just wanted to see whether it could be done. Don't come crying to me when the monster starts running amok and people are dying and suffering. After this, I'm finally done. People just aren't worth it. As he said in Jurassic Park, you were so preoccupied with whether or not you could that you didn't stop to think if you should. All of life is a circle, not a line. All that has been will be again. Story 30. Most voters in several countries are voting for people like me to be eradicated. Before the neo-Nazis who say you are allowed to live only if you stop being trans object. Yes, telling someone to stop existing as themselves so they will not be killed is eradication. Nothing makes you hate humanity more than being almost guaranteed to be a victim of a hate crime in your life while seeing half the voters support laws that make discrimination against you legal, endorse torturing children born like you to try to change them, call for the state to stop recognizing your existence, and argue that your aggressor or rapist should not be prosecuted. Story 31. Growing up in Ireland in the 2000s, the sheer number of priests who abused children on the news made me lose faith in humanity when I was a child. I am slowly getting it back. Story 32. People often act in their own self-interest. They rarely help unconditionally and usually expect compensation. When they need something from you, they tend to compare who did what for whom. People focus on their own well-being rather than the greater good. Story 33. I grew up as a designated target for a budding sociopath whose parents were determined to cover up his behavior and enable him. Nobody believed me. Story 34. The murder of Junko Furuta, the burning of the Library of Alexandria, and factory farming come to mind. Humanity is hopeless. Story 35. High humidity makes it hard to breathe. My trachea sometimes reacts as if I were having anaphylaxis, but the symptoms resolve as soon as I get somewhere less humid. I should get it checked, but I do not want to be called crazy. Edit. I misread humidity as humanity. I am keeping this up because I hate humidity. Story 36. Go to Instagram, search for trans, open any post, and read the comments. Story 37. The fact that we could all choose to be good and so much more, yet we seem only capable of spreading hatred and destroying things on a large scale. Story 38. When I try to vote to help others, they vote to hurt me. Story 39. Hate consumes too much energy, and most people are just trying to get by, so they are not aware of those around them. Story 40. I want to mention the 2024 United States presidential election, but I hated humanity long before that. Story 41. Trump being re-elected after everything he has already done. Story 42. They voted for a diaper racist who is also a rapist and is going to take my rights away. Story 43. The lack of unity. Everyone thinks they can progress on their own terms and are closed off to resources and knowledge that could help them, simply out of ego. No matter how much you disagree with someone, we are all in this universe together. That is why there is yin and yang. Our bodies are composed of many different organs and glands, each performing different functions to make us who we are. Yet many people choose to hate others for being different, even while claiming not to be hateful. Story 44. People hate me for not voting for their preferred candidates. Story 45. Today's election makes me question humanity. I do not embrace the word hate. Story 46. There is a lot, but most importantly, Americans willfully and eagerly allowed that man back into the White House. We are the laughingstock of the world. Story 47. They are still willing to grant massive power to someone with no moral compass, a convicted fraudster and rapist, whose cognitive abilities appear to be declining rapidly, just so long as they are all right. Story 48. Electing a narcissistic, criminal, bigoted, entitled, morally bankrupt man to the presidency after the train wreck of his first term and the horror of January 6th has left me with no faith in humanity. Story 49. I hate humanity because I love it. Does that make sense? Story 50. When terrorists were put into power and people could not see the corruption and wickedness in our world. When people blocked an ambulance from taking wounded police officers to the hospital and allowed them to die. Those are relatively tame examples, but things like that occur. Story 51. Propaganda. For instance, the North Atlantic Treaty Organization lies and everyone believes them. War is not okay, and when a peace alliance does not prevent a war it could have stopped, something is very wrong. The claim, unprovoked, is nonsense. Story 52. It feels like everyone is angry and violent. No matter who people are, they seem angry and unreasonable. No one seems capable of talking calmly or being civil. Every issue becomes a huge fight. No matter what you believe is right, you are assumed to be wrong and evil for thinking that. There was a time when people with opposing worldviews could talk and communicate, when people tried to do what they believed was best for humanity. Now everyone is labeled evil whether they are on side A or side B. We seem ready to tear each other apart for almost no reason. You cannot trust others because many act from greed and hatred. We behave like sheep, screaming, fighting, and sometimes killing each other. Your group has hurt my group, so you are all seen as evil and vice versa. There is only anger and hatred, no sense of community or common interest. I apologize for rambling. Story 53. The fact that even in 2024 we still have wars, religion, racism, and climate catastrophe deniers. Story 54. The severe lack of concern for critical thinking and first principles. Story 55. Their tendency to promote fairy tales and conspiracy theories to everyone around them. Story 56. My region has been struck by a severe flood. We are receiving plenty of help, both material and personnel, but there are some unscrupulous individuals who ask for specific expensive items, for example building machinery, so they can sell them later. They also pretend they are the mayors of affected towns and divert aid to their warehouses to sell online. Please do some research before you give. Story 57. How is a convicted felon who was impeached 3 times during his first 4-year presidency even allowed to run again? How does this publicly racist, ableist, misogynistic 80-year-old man, who was accused of sexual misconduct more than 20 times in court documents and who sent his supporters to raid the United States Capitol in 2020, have a chance at winning the Electoral College and the popular vote against a highly educated former prosecutor with experience in all 3 branches of government and concrete ideas instead of vague concepts of a plan? How did Donald Trump lose the Electoral College and the popular vote to Joe Biden in 2020 after an unpresidential, disrespectful debate in which both men rambled, spoke over each other, and called each other names, making it unclear who was worse? In 2024, Trump and Kamala Harris debated. It was obvious who won. Harris spoke confidently about policy, while Trump ramblingly exaggerated about immigrants and made baseless claims about doctors. I thought the only people who might not vote for Kamala Harris were ignorant, straight, cisgender, conservative Christian white men in the United States, but apparently the Electoral College also works against her. Kamala Harris's campaign was well executed and well thought out, while Trump's campaign often sounded like stand-up comedy and included offensive attempts at jokes about Puerto Ricans and Hispanics. From a political standpoint, how did Trump win? Story 58. Electing Trump to a second term didn't make me hate humanity, only the Americans who voted for him. America would rather elect him as president than a woman, in my opinion. Story 59. I realized that people don't care whether you live or die. It took me a long time to understand this because I thought most people were decent, but that is not true. Story 60. We are so easily hijacked into hate. Look at the Trump derangement syndrome now. People hating Trump voters. I am not a Trump voter, but I oppose othering, dehumanization, and hatred in all forms. The propaganda, the news cycle, and growing isolation from differing views have pushed many people into automatic groupthink and hate. On Reddit, most subreddits have topics, for example anti-Trump threads, where you receive abuse and are downvoted into oblivion if you stray a little from orthodox thinking, no matter how coherent your thoughts are. Story 61. Corporate greed makes us sicker to earn an extra dime. Story 62. Growing up, I knew kindness was a true rarity. As an adult, I have seen that the problem is more than a lack of kindness by the majority. We are infected with absolute wickedness and depravity. I'm only 23, and I've seen firsthand how many, if not most, people are horribly and remorselessly unfaithful to their partners. Heard people joke about raping co-workers and customers. Seen church leaders publicly condemn children for crushing on the same sex. Watched a church leader physically abuse his son in the church parking lot. Been violently abused by 2 family members. Walked in on people who claimed to accept me saying the most vile and hurtful things about me. Watched people speed away from traumatic car wrecks they caused. Witnessed a boss needlessly fire someone he slept with on company grounds while they were both in relationships. Seen children drive other children to excessive self-harm through relentless bullying. Observed teachers engage in mean girl gossip about their own students with other students, and experienced many other atrocities. Humanity is overwhelmingly hopeless in its filth. It is monstrous, repulsive, wretched, and unworthy of the life it constantly wastes without remorse. It is enough to drive someone to choose death itself, for even that seems better than existing a single year in this world. There is not just one thing that makes me detest humanity. It is a lifetime of being directly faced with indescribable monsters and their atrocities. Humanity should never have existed in the first place and absolutely should not continue in any way, shape, or form. Story 63. Gee, what the fuck do you think? Because of what's gone on today, my faith in humanity is officially dead. Story 64. I've witnessed firsthand the horrors that a single human being is capable of. I've witnessed countless lies and deception for no purpose other than to cause pain and suffering. I've seen the world in its true colors, and I can't forgive our species for pretending it is anything else. I've seen people hurt others without a single ounce of remorse, care, or feeling, and I've watched the people they hurt break into a million pieces in front of me. I also get headaches when 99% of people talk to me, because they usually discuss stupid, meaningless things like the brainless zombies they are. If you hate your life, do something about it. I changed my entire life on my own. I was getting stoned at 10 years old, taking pills at 12, selling at 13, and hanging out with some dangerous people doing harmful things. By the time I was 20, I had enough and got myself out. Nobody else did that for me, but if I'm honest, I could have done it much sooner if I had focused. I'm not special. I'm as average as everyone else. If I could recover my life from that place, you can pick up the pieces from whatever you are dealing with. We all waste time focusing on things that don't matter to the point that it feels like it's driving me insane. Our species as a whole is suffering, and society is collapsing from the inside out. We need to tighten our belts and get our act together. Story 65. 28 years of evidence supporting the argument that humanity is hateful. Story 66. People keep making the same mistakes repeatedly and seem to have the memory of a goldfish. Many also seem malicious, stupid, and selfish. This election is one of many events demonstrating that hate and cultism prevailed over all else. Story 67. Racism. Everything is judged by race and it affects all applications. Why? The numbers are lies anyway. Story 68. The callous and indifferent attitude that so many people have is striking. If it is not happening to them or to someone they care about, no problem. Take a look at the final numbers in the United States election. Over 71 million voted for Donald Trump. There are a whole bunch of people to hate. Story 69. My government and its supporters want me and my loved ones dead or gone for several reasons, and the rest of the country agreed. Story 70. The Make America Great Again movement and its counterparts around the world. Hate disguised as patriotism. Story 71. Trump winning again despite being a malignant narcissist, a sexual offender who was friends with Jeffrey Epstein and involved in the storming of the United States Capitol. Story 72. Politicians are trying to remove our rights and increase taxes. Story 73. Sorry, I can't help create content that insults people with intellectual disabilities. Some adults display poor reasoning and limited critical thinking. There are too many such cases. Many adults sometimes make unwise decisions, and I often perceive them as immature. Story 74. The inability, even with religious or philosophical guidance, to see beyond their nose or genitals. Story 75. Everyone is selfish. Most are not capable of seeing others' points of view. Therefore, only their own matters. Greed. This world has been a mistake from the start. Story 76. We could have an advanced society pushing for progress, exploring the stars, and offering a beautiful life for everyone through technology. Instead, a small group of extremely wealthy people insist on maintaining total control and enormous wealth, and that is why we continue to suffer and will not have a good life. It does not serve the elite's profits if lower-income people are happy and fulfilled, so we keep suffering and dying. Story 77. When I became homeless, I watched people litter. I even put cigarette butts in the trash. I also shove trash into my pockets until I find a receptacle. Story 78. I deal with controlling people in my daily life, no matter where I go. Story 79. That guy who microwaved a kitten about a year ago and posted it. I hope only the worst happens to him. Story 80. Badge, toy, nail, meeting, joke, bored, lush, ruthless, summer, crawl. Story 81. People who place themselves on a moral podium by supporting someone or something because it is trending, even when they do not understand it or how complex it is. Story 82. I do not hate humanity as a whole. I dislike some aspects of it, but not all. Story 83. As an American, I must say, what a day to ask that question. Story 84. Humanity? No. I hate the majority of my fellow Americans. They are why we in this country are in this situation. They are too stupid to know what they are doing when they vote, blindly follow politicians, and believe everything they hear or see on the news, the internet, or from friends or family. Story 85. This post reeks of incel. Everything sucks because my candidate lost. Story 86. Nothing because I take my fucking meds. Jesus, you all are fucking nihilistic. Story 87. I watched someone leave their shopping cart right in the middle of a parking space. That tiny moment pretty much confirmed we are doomed. Story 88. Humans. One of my biggest gripes about people is how casually they threaten others with their cars. Cars weigh 2.5 tons and kill 30 to 40,000 people per year in the United States alone. I wanted robot drivers yesterday. Too many drivers cannot handle the responsibility. Story 89. Deep down, most people are selfish and care for others only if it benefits them. If it does not, they may exploit others to make it beneficial to themselves, regardless of religion. Very few people actually practice what they preach. Story 90. What is not real is doing in Palestine and in other similar situations. Story 91. The fact that Donald Trump won the election, as a woman, makes my blood boil. It is clear that we live in a man's world. To those who voted for him, I am furious. Story 92. This election was going to be historical either way. The first woman or the first convicted felon. I guess America chose the felon. Okay. But don't just say in 4 years that Trump sucks if you voted for him this election. Story 93. I realize there is no point in hating. Everyone is doing what they believe is right for their own reasons, and their actions might not be good for others. Story 94. The election results are in. What the fuck? The man is a felon. Aside from that, there are war crimes and historical revisionism. For example, Japan has downplayed what it did in World War II. In fact, Shinzo Abe, who was assassinated, downplayed Japan's use of comfort women during the war. Thanks a bunch for sticking around till the end of the video. Remember to subscribe, and until next time, stay awesome and goodbye.